The first stone was thrown on a Tuesday. It was a smooth, river-washed piece of granite, perfectly sized for a hand. It sailed in a silent, high arc over the manicured boxwood hedge and struck the laminated plastic sign that read, Cedar Glen, a premier community. HOA approved. The crack was satisfyingly loud in the pre-dawn stillness. For Arthur and Moira Finch, watching from their darkened living room window, it was the opening salvo in a war they never wanted to fight. The sign, with its smug, sans serif font, was the symbol of their oppressor, the Cedar Glen Homeowners Association, presided over by the impeccably tyrannical Brenda Plimpton. It had started with a single, wilting petunia. Brenda, on her daily power walk of inspection, had deemed the flower a visual detraction from the community's vibrant aesthetic. A fine of $50 was levied. Arthur, a retired history professor with a fondness for chaos theory, had laughed it off and paid it. Moira, a former investigative journalist whose curiosity had been dulled by years of suburban peace, had simply replanted the offending bloom. But the fines kept coming. The shade of their beige paint was 0.5% to ecru. Their trash cans were visible from the street for a full 7 minutes after pickup. Their oak tree shed acorns onto Brenda's perfectly barren, chemically green lawn. Each transgression was met with a crisply worded violation notice, a fine, and a threat of a lien on their home. The final straw was the shed. Arthur's modest wooden shed, where he built birdhouses and repaired old clocks, was deemed non-compliant with Article 14, subsection B, outbuildings of a non-ornamental nature. They were ordered to demolish it. Appeals to the HOA board were met with Brenda's smug, unblinking stare. Rules are the foundation of civilization, Arthur, Shed said, her voice like the sound of a guillotine being oiled. Without them, we have anarchy. That night, drowning their fury in a bottle of Pinot Noir, Moira had slammed her glass down. Anarchy. She wants order. I'll show her order. I'll show her the beautiful, pristine, suffocating order of her own rules. A dangerous light ignited in Arthur's eyes. You know, he said, a professor preparing a lecture, the most effective revolutions aren't fought with guns, but with paperwork. They use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. Moira smiled, a predator's grin he hadn't seen in 20 years. Then let's get some tools. Phase 1 was reconnaissance. Moira, the journalist, reawakened. She filed a formal request to review the HOA's bylaws, covenants, conditions, and restrictions CC and RS, all 287 pages of them. She then filed another request, citing an obscure state statute, for every single financial transaction, meeting minute, and violation notice issued in the past 5 years. Brenda, delighted by what she perceived as their capitulation, provided it all. It's so wonderful to see you finally taking an interest in community governance, Moira. For weeks, their home became a war room. Maps of Cedar Glen were taped to the walls. Arthur, the theorist, cross-referenced bylaws, finding contradictions, loopholes, and absurdities. Moira, the investigator, pored over the financials, her eyes narrowing at line items for topiary maintenance and fountain ambience lighting that far exceeded reasonable cost. They discovered Brenda's secret. The premier community plaque at the entrance, purchased from a company owned by Brenda's brother-in-law at a 300% markup. The mandatory approved landscaper, Brenda's nephew. It was a tidy little empire of kickbacks and nepotism, all hidden under the pristine veneer of conformity. But exposing it would be too straightforward, too messy. They didn't want to topple the regime. They wanted to make it choke on itself. Phase 2, meticulous aggression. They began to fight fire with ice-cold, bureaucratic precision. They measured every lawn in the executive board's neighborhood. Brenda's was a 1/4 inch to high violation, 3.2.A. They used a light meter to prove the watts of Vince Petrellis, treasurer. Porch light exceeded the stipulated lumen output, violation 8.7.c. They documented every minute a garage door was left open, every stray leaf on a driveway, every trash can put out a minute too early. They filed formal complaints for every single thing. The HOA's mailbox, a locked brass behemoth outside the clubhouse, began to swell with their white, business-sized envelopes. Each contained a notarized complaint, with photographic evidence time-stamped and attached, citing the specific bylaw violated. The board was initially amused, then annoyed, then utterly overwhelmed. They were being buried by the very paperwork they cherished. Brenda tried to dismiss them, but the Finches' complaints were flawless, unassailable. To ignore them would be to admit the rules were arbitrary. Their entire power structure was based on their inflexibility. The first board meeting to address the deluge was a disaster. Dozens of homeowners, some who had been quietly seething for years, showed up, smelling blood in the water. They'd heard about the Finches' crusade. "You fined me for my pink azaleas, Mrs. Gable shouted. "But I see Brenda's brother-in-law has pink azaleas. What's the variance request number for that? My driveway is composite stone, not approved brick, Mr. Henderson boomed. "I have a receipt from the treasurer's company. Is that in the minutes?" Brenda gavelled the meeting into chaos. The Finches sat in the back, silent, wearing small, identical smiles. Phase 3, the master stroke. Arthur had found it. Article 22, Section 1. Community Aesthetics and the Holiday Decoration Window. It stated that holiday displays could only be erected between the first day of the month of the holiday and be removed no later than 7 days after the holiday's conclusion. Failure to comply resulted in a fine of $100 per day. And there was Appendix C, a comprehensive list of recognized federal and community holidays. It was July 2nd. That night, under the cover of a moonless sky, Arthur and Moira went to work. Not on their own house, but on Brenda's. From their car, they unloaded a dozen large, weatherproof boxes. With the efficiency of a special ops team, they decorated Brenda Plimpton's immaculate lawn. They planted a towering, fully decorated artificial Christmas tree, complete with lights and a glowing star. They lined her walkway with illuminated candy canes. A life-sized, inflatable Santa Claus, riding a rocket ship, took pride of place on her perfect green lawn. And on her front door, they hung a massive wreath, adorned with a bright red bow. As a final touch, Arthur placed a small, laminated sign next to the inflatable Santa. It cited Article 22, Section 1, and listed every single holiday from the appendix that fell outside the permitted decoration window: Groundhog Day, Arbor Day, National Tartan Day, and a dozen others. Current display, it read, is in violation for 347 of the past 365 days. They drove away, leaving a spectacular, glorious, and utterly forbidden spectacle glowing in the suburban night. The dawn revealed everything. Brenda's shriek of pure, unadulterated rage was said to have cracked a window. She tried to take it down, but the Finches were already there, with a video camera and a copy of the bylaws. "You can't, Brenda," Moira said sweetly. "A complaint has already been filed. The display is evidence for the violation hearing. Tampering with it would be a violation of procedural ethics. See Appendix D, I believe." Brenda stood, paralyzed, on her porch, her robe pulled tight against the absurdity of Christmas in July. The story went viral. News trucks lined the streets of Cedar Glen. "Ho Grinch gets a taste of her own medicine," the headline screamed. The national spotlight turned its unforgiving gaze on Brenda Plimpton and her empire of pettiness. The subsequent investigation, triggered by the financial records the Finches quietly leaked to a reporter, uncovered the whole sordid network of kickbacks. Brenda and the board were ousted in a landslide recall vote. The first meeting of the new HOA board, chaired by a pleasantly sensible woman named Maria, proposed a motion to drastically simplify the bylaws and focus on actual community building, not punishment. Arthur and Moira Finch, the reluctant revolutionaries, voted in favor. They walked home hand in hand under the soft glow of the streetlights, lights that were, they noted with satisfaction, exactly the stipulated 2700 Kelvin warmth. Their shed, rebuilt and freshly painted a perfectly compliant shade of timber wolf, stood proudly in the backyard, and on its door Arthur had hung a small, hand-carved birdhouse. It was, by any measure, a visual detraction, but it was also finally home.